Hello everyone, my name is Markus Kröger from the University of Helsinki, where I work as the Associate Professor of Global Development Studies and an Academy of Finland Research Fellow. I will be talking today about the extractivisms, existences and extinctions, monoculture plantations and Amazon deforestation. This is a talk based on my new book, which is coming out in November 2021. The book has 4 different chapters besides the introduction. The first one tackles this new issue of making a review of the existing studies on extractivisms around the world, especially in Latin America, but also elsewhere, and especially the slice of the literature which looks at the existences and the mass extinctions going on right now. The key argument of the book is that we need to pay much more attention into what exists and how, for what time, and what kind of changes in existences in terms of what beings can exist, for example, are created by expanding extractivisms. And the book is based on my field research in the Amazon, in Brazil and Peru. And the third chapter explains through what I call 4 key questions of existences, how the agro-extractivist expansion of soybean monocultures in Brazil's Mato Grosso state has impacted the existences there. And in the conclusions, I make general notes on how global extractivisms are related to the discussions of world ecology and how existential redistribution should be considered much more in detail in those literatures. It's an open access book, and here you can see the link. This is a photo from northern Mato Grosso, from Nova Mutum. As you can see here, there's a recently planted soybean there. There's nothing else in the horizon except soybeans, and here's the farm owner, the producer, who has about 6,000 hectares of soybean plantation, and at other parts of the year he plants corn. These are the locations where I did the field research. So you can see the red dots. We started from Cuiabá in the end of 2019. This is the soybean capital of Mato Grosso and of Brazil and the world, traveling this BR-163 highway all the way up to Santarém. That's about over 2,000 kilometers. And I will show photos of, this is Nova Mutum from the previous photo. Then there's the city of Sinop, Quaranta do Norte, and then this area around Baú, where there is the city of Novo Progresso, for example, where the famous Day of fires were taking place in 2019, when the Bolsonaro regime supporters were setting fire into conservation areas to grab lands in there. And after that, I went to this region of Itaituba, talked to ranchers there, the city mayor and so on, and also visited the Munduruku in this area where dams were being planned in this Tapajós River, and then doing research in the Santarém region. There's also a research in the Peruvian side, which I started in 2017, traveling from Cusco all the way to Brazil in Acre and observing the changes there. Here is the same photo of the same area from Google satellites, and here you can see the extension of deforestation. So these areas used to be forested also in the north of Mato Grosso, in Sinop, Nova Mutum and so on, but now they have been turned into those waste, endless soybean plantations. And this is, of course, a major existential change in terms of what can exist and not. So, for example, there's the establishment of the city of Sinop, which took place in 1973. In the photo on the left-hand side, you can see the first road as it was built into the rainforest by the military in 1973. And the right-hand side is the same city in 2018, in the same crossroad of the road. So you can see a dramatic transformation in terms of existences in that area, on how the landscape is transformed and so on. And this used to be the central village of the local indigenous people called Panara. So I will read a part of my book here for you to get an understanding of the kind of ethnographic work I'm doing. During my multi-sided political ethnography on the causalities of deforestation in the Amazon, I did field research in November and December 2019 along the PR 163 highway running from Cuiabá to Santarém in Brazil. I talked with the almost extinguished Panará indigenous people. The Panará met the fury of the so-called resource frontier, which was how the Amazon was framed in the 1970s by the dictatorship. The military government ordered a highway to be built through the dense rainforest areas inhabited by the Panará. At this time, they had little or no outside influences or contacts. Currently, these areas are large soybean plantations where one cannot see the end of the fields, just empty horizons. The central village of the Panará was located in what is today the center of the large city of Sinop in Mato Grosso. The name of the city comes from the first letters of Sociedade Imobiliária Noroeste do Paraná, the Northeastern Paraná Real Estate Company, which was the name of the corporation from the southern Paraná state that was given the right by the dictatorship to colonize northern Mato Grosso by bringing in farmers with predominantly European origin from Paraná. And in this photo, there's an illustration of what the baseline situation of the landscape was when the so-called frontier expansion began. Landscape changes are quite stark. This expansion turned the Panará's homes into white men's real estate, as the city grid being laid into the rainforest right on the place where the Panará indigenous people's central village is located shows. To see Sinop today, one would hardly know that there had been once an extensive forest in the same place that the city now occupies. The landscape changes during the past 50 years have been shocking. To have an idea of what the region looked like now, here is a photo of the surviving Panará people. I visited a middle-aged survivor of the Panará tribe, Nicregua Panará Guarantá, and his family, to interview him in Portuguese, which should be noted was not his mother tongue. I have made the translation into English about the experience of the 1973 transformation on their lives. So here is what he said. When the highway was built, no one knew what roads or tractors were. So they opened up highways running from Cuiabá to Santarém and brought many problems to the Panará people. Only 70-75 people survived. End of quote. This was an ethnocide and ecocide of major proportions, removing the lived environments, their existences, and the place-based understandings of those who existed. Nicre also reflected on these broader changes that building the highway and colonization meant for the Panará. These are illustrative of the extinctions of existences. Quote, this region had tall forest, a place where bows were of use, and today this is not here. So we perceive that today grass substitutes forest, and this leaves a person very sad. I see our people planting for the large farmer. It was not like this because the forest itself was tall. One knew where the place to cultivate was, knew that where there is high forest, that area is for hunting and there are many fruits. Today we do not see anything anymore. And this is left very clear by the people, especially by the old who walk here and know this region. They know of the place even without the forest, even with the grass that has substituted the forest, they remember of this place. Know where there is game, where to hunt turtle. Today it is difficult, the population increased and we have to hunt very far and fish also very far because the river today is drying each time more because of deforestation. For this reason, we do not manage to hunt or fish anymore, and especially in the dry season it is very difficult. Very dry, and in this one, does not manage to walk. In the past year, a problem occurred. Many fish died, and we do not know why so many fish died. This deforestation leaves the community very preoccupied. So this is the photo from the trip just a little bit south from Sinop, showing how the landscape has changed. So I ask 4 key questions of existences. Firstly, who or what exist? How can they exist? What is the quality of existence? Then third, in which time or how long can they exist? And then fourth, who are the key entities deciding and contesting the rights to exist? And these questions need to be asked for each of the meaningful key places where existences are being redistributed by an extractivist chain, such as a world ecological transformation, expansion of capitalist commodity frontiers. So these four questions are key essence for what I call an existential political economy. They direct attention into the quality of existence for those who exist in a particular area. They also answer the question of how long can those who exist in the place live? How is the conception of and rhythm of time, and how is that transformed when, for example, monoculture plantations are expanded? For how long does the extractivist process seem to continue? Here is a photo of a poisoning tractor running 60 kilometers per hour or 80 kilometers per hour. These are very expensive machineries, and they work all the time poisoning the fields with glyphosate and other pesticides, which are prohibited in the EU and many other countries. And the targets are here, these insects, which are not wanted to be in there. They are extinguished. So the logic in here is that only the soybean plantation can survive in this space. It is not anymore a place with multiple existences, as in the rainforest, and even the other species which would be able to eat that soybean are not allowed to stay there. Instead, these poultry factories with tens of thousands of chicken in each of these farms are also established in the same area, for example, here in Nova Mutum. So you have an expansion of both the soybean feed production and then the chicken meat factories and their workers. So to do a broader analysis of a world ecology of existences, I offer here some methodological advice as in the book. So for world ecology of existences, I think that one needs to ask these four questions, but along the whole commodity chain or the value web. So in that case, you need to study the different logistical pathways, the road, railroad, port, maritime localities, what kind of existential redistributions are happening there. Also, what is happening in the slaughterhouses, industrial facilities, what happens to the working hours of people, are they becoming much more monotonous and so on. So their quality of the existences of the workers are also transformed along the commodity chain in that particular world ecology, in its existential dimensions. And then what happens when those products are consumed in supermarkets, homes, to the way one is and the way one uses time. And then we also need to study the afterlives of what is left of the life and beings that are transformed into commodities, such as garbage piles and recycling operations. So my recommendation concerning the methodology for single researchers is to focus on a particular sector, because if one studies such existences throughout the whole world ecological chain, it's quite a lot of stuff to do. So for example, focus on mining, and in a particular sector of mining like gold, for example, and even in the specific extraction style like open pit illegal mining. And that takes place in a particular regionally situated world ecological context. And multi-sided ethnography and process tracing can be used as methods here. So the book defines also extractivism much more carefully and in detail than many prior studies of extractivisms. So there are four characteristics which are listed here. Firstly, extractivisms erase most or all of the preceding life forms, or significantly reduce their number. Second, they expand monocultural and monotonous life forms. Third, they produce barren, toxic, or wasted environments, which lock in extreme power inequalities. And fourth, they create steep inequalities whereby an elite or a political economic sector or group which is dominant in a bounded setting skews the possibilities to accumulate wealth for itself, leaving for others only a limited share of the yields. Of course, then I also study whether all of these characteristics are available in all or present in all forms of extractivism, and that is not so. And they are also not present always in the same degree. So I say that we need to identify different degrees of extractivism, running from 5 to -5, for example, 5 denoting hyper-extractivist, and 0 non-extractivist, and -1, for example, anti-extractivist. you could have different categories here as well. This is more precise than saying that all would be either extractivist or not extractivist. It's not really so. And here I have analyzed those 4 qualities above that I listed. For example, B, the monocultures. So for example, Amazon illegal gold mining doesn't really, it's not applicable here. So they don't expand monocultures, but they are expanding still the barren places and so on. So here I have a judgment of the quality of these different activities. And here you can see alternatives to extractivism like MST, Landless Movement Settlements in Brazil, which are anti-extractivist because they seek to occupy land that would be turned into agrarian extractivist expansions. And here you see an expansion of the monoculture plantations in Brazil. You see a huge expansion of soybean cultivation areas, for example. So the book unites several new studies on existences. Firstly, World-Ecology, where the rest of so-called nature does not need to be paid for its words, or it is not even noticed, by the work of Jason Moore. And then the new studies on extractivisms, the agrarian political economies of commodity frontiers, as well as political ontology. So by uniting these 4 strands of theory, the cheap nature created by extractivists can be seen as a redistribution of existences. That is the creation of larger volume of select types of existences that are useful for capital at the cost of destroying or neglecting all other existences. And this book offers a framework and illustrates how to conduct the political economy of existences. It argues that the consideration of existences of both human and other than human entanglements should be given much more emphasis across the scientific fields and policy-making processes. In addition, places where these entanglements exist and which are unique and cannot be compensated via other places should be emphasized. It is essential that the vocabularies which flatten existences, such as those typical in resource and environmental economics, which treat living beings as numbers that can then be lumped together, need to start to change. Thank you for your attention. Here is a photo from Alter do Chão near Santarém. I also discuss in the book my personal experiences in the Amazon since 2005, and also the kind of places outside of the capitalist world ecology and outside of the extractivist expansions. So there are both sides in the book discussing and expanding on the notion of what exists and can exist in the world today and how those existences are being transformed. Thank you for your attention.